Welcome and well met. Come warm yourself by the fire and let us regale you with mighty tales, tales of adventure, tales of heroism, tales of Tamriel. I am your host, Aggelos, and you are watching Tales of Tamriel, our Elder Scrolls gameplay and news podcast, all about the Elder Scrolls Online, as well as some of the single-player titles, because they are amazing. I am joined by the one, the only Nate, a.k.a. Misa. How are you?
I erect the spine of greeting. May wide branches shade your path.
Very nice. Very nice.
Not sure where that came from. Hi.
I'm not sure either, but it worked and actually fit really, really well with the intro. I really like it. For those who are wondering, the awesome intro music that you heard is from a YouTuber called Family Jewels. If you want to check out that song, which was the Elder Scrolls melody, as well as all of his other video game covers, you can check him out, youtube.com/FamilyJewels7X. It's a 7X or X. Now I have to look at my notes because I wanted to make sure. 7X. Family Jewels 7X on YouTube. Fantastic cover. We're in game today, as you can see me running around, and we don't actually have video feed on, so Nate didn't get to see me rocking out to that song, but I do it every show. When we're playing it, I'm just headbanging over here to get hyped for this game. So, yes, check him out. Give him a follow. He does amazing, amazing work. Nate, have you ever checked him out before?
Oh, of course. Ever since you started using the music, absolutely.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I love stuff like that. I'm currently working on making a new heavy metal drum track to a song from Sonic the Hedgehog. So it's a very satisfying branch of music to take part in. Good times.
That sounded actually incredibly fascinating when you said. I can just imagine with Sonic the Hedgehog and heavy metal drums. That would just.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'll send you a recording at some point once it's done. It's pretty good. It's fun, if I say so myself.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely need to do that. And welcome, chat room. I see we have a few people in here. A first-time live viewer, New Demon 4K. That song got me pumped, and I'm just sitting here. It always does. So let's go ahead and we're going to roll right into the show. Obviously, the first thing we do is we talk about our adventures in the wonderful world of Nirn and Tamriel. And Nate, because you are our special guest host today, well, even though you're not even a guest host, I hate saying that. It's weird because, Nate, you're a permanent host, but it's your real life sucks. And therefore, we can only get you on when we can, but as everyone,
well, I'm pretty much here for the month of May. So
it's amazing. I was going to say that Arkhaniir, he's not with us today. He's actually in chat room. Hey,
Arkhaniir.
Yeah, you see him in chat.
All these shoes.
As Arkhaniir says, Nate is a permanent host who can't make it all the time. It's true. But Nate was ever so generous as to say, hey, Arkhaniir's busy. He's not going to be able to be on the show. Ag, you suck at doing it alone, which I agree 100%. I'm coming on the show. We're going to make this great. So. Yeah,
pretty much. And it was quite easy because I said, yeah, that's no problem. Dude, let's spend an hour talking about Naryu Virian. I'm going to spend an entire day researching her background. You're like, yeah, that sounds awesome. So that's all the convincing I kind of needed.
You didn't even have to twist my arm. You're like, let's talk Naru. Yes. You cut you off mid-sentence. We're just doing that. That's not going to happen. Another thing I actually wanted to note, because I actually had quite a few people, and if you follow the Discord, if you get a chance, Nate, look in the dragon memes, because they actually put my name in there for dragon, and look at in Discord. Just look. I think it's the latest meme that's going on. Let me see. Okay. Dragon meme. It is the last picture that Gallisner posted.
I'm just finishing up the Kvatch Arena at the moment.
Okay.
And,
well, whenever you get a chance, you're going to want to look at that because there was a lot of what's the word I want to use? A lot of interesting response to my lore rant last week about because Arkhaniir asked about what the significance was of Bardal. So I went into the lore of Bardal, as well as then I kind of went into a tangent of, yeah, the reason why it's so interesting is because Vivek is an interesting character, and I started talking about, I think it was like the 17th sermon where he talks about his orgy with Molag Bal.
Oh, yes, Molag Balls, of course.
Yeah, so it got descriptive.
Vivek.
Yeah, Vivek, I'm telling you. And, the magic hermaphrodite is Vivek. But it got such a good response, and people are like, I really want more lore sections, and which is awesome because you're on, so we're going to do one on Naryu today. But I pretty much said, listen, guys, I love talking lore. You just need to tell me what you want to know about, and I'll go nuts over it. Like, even that whole Bardal thing was not planned. Arkhaniir was just like, I don't get it. What's the significance? I didn't play Morrowind. And that was all I needed to talk.
If you didn't play Morrowind, it'll be a little bit lost on you.
Yeah. If you don't know the significance of it if you haven't played Morrowind. So I was more than happy, and I know a lot of people haven't played Morrowind because it's older, right? Like it's kind of hard to get into now. I was blessed enough in my youth to be able to play it when it was like relevant. So it's not like, I shouldn't say relevant. I should say when those were actually considered good graphics. So there was none of this, oh, this game is so old, the graphics are awful, because technically at that time I'm sitting there going, these things are amazing,
Yeah. So, I came at it from a different angle, and we can probably talk about this a little bit later, but I was sort of in first-person shooter mode at that point quite significantly. Half-Life was sort of the big thing at the time. And so I got into Morrowind, but it was never sort of like a real obsession. It wasn't until I replayed large, huge parts of it in later life, where the familiarity comes from the lore and the setting and the general environment that you're in, rather than the familiarity of, the particular towns and the graphics and the locations. And it's one of those things where if you've played through Oblivion, you've played Skyrim, you've played ESO, you've played any of these, later games, you can get past the graphics as long as you have some interest in the lore and the setting and the history of Tamriel. And then it feels like, I don't know, it's weird. It's kind of like meeting someone that you used to spend a lot of time with in your childhood and forgot. You've still got lots in common, but lots of new stuff to explore too. It's weird.
Yes, that is a perfect example of, the lore is really what brought me back, and I played it multiple times already. And yeah, if you have an appreciation for the world already, it's easier to overlook the older gameplay because that's, you're there for the world that right? Like, prepping it up for going into Morrowind here in the next month or two, so it's easy to get into that.
A little heads up, people, if you do like Morrowind when it comes out and you think, hey, Morag Tong, I wish there was more of that. Well, you can join the Morag Tong in the original Morrowind and become the Grandmaster of it. So, lots to do.
Lots to do indeed. But yeah, that spun off a conversation in our Discord chat, and I said, listen, guys, head on over dungeoncrawlernetwork.com. There's a contact us form. Hit that, and there should be a drop down. You can select Tales of Tamriel and just write in a lore topic that you want to hear me talk about. I don't even care what it is. Just be like, even if you know what it is and you just want me to talk lore, that's all you got to do is write it in and say, I want you to talk about whatever, and I will get it on the next show. Like, there you go. So now you have an excuse, I guess, to
yep.
Because I could talk lore, and people are like, why don't you talk lore? We love when you do that. I'm like, well, to be honest, it's one of those things where I do know a lot of the lore, not the, and Nate can attest to this. He's the same way. It's kind of hard for me with planning the rest of the show to go, I don't know what people want to know about, but if you give just a topic, I'll go nuts with it, So,
and if you ask really, really hard enough and you want to hear Faze talk about Argonians, I bet enough people messaging will make that happen.
Yeah. No, she would probably do this thing. Yes, she would. Fishmaker in chat, Morrowind is better than Skyrim. There, I said it. No apology. I actually 100% agree. The only thing that's actually a redeeming quality of Skyrim is the fact that, it's modern. If Morrowind, were side by side of equal graphic fidelity, oh my goodness, hands down, Morrowind would blow it out of the water. It is an amazing, amazing RPG. It really is. So, I mean, do yourself, if you can get by the older looks of it, do yourself a favor, get out there and play some Morrowind. I mean, I think Good Old Games has it cheap for like what, $9 right now, maybe even less. I haven't looked in a while. Like you can
not
get
that expensive.
No.
Steam either.
I mean, you probably spend more on coffee at Starbucks than what you could get Morrowind for. So, all right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and just jump right on into our tales. Nate, what have you been doing?
Since I've been on, I was on in when was I last on? April, middle of April possibly. And whenever it was either just as the anniversary week was starting or just before it started. And so I spent the overwhelmingly vast majority of that week saying, right, I am milking these writs for everything they are worth, for as much as is physically possible this week. Because for those of you who didn't take part of it and missed out, you could get a anniversary bonus box for every repeatable quest in the game on every character every day. Mm-hmm. So your crafting writs, your Dark Brotherhood stuff, your Kvatch arenas, some stuff in Cyrodiil for all the capturable districts like Bruma and everywhere else. You know, all of these, you could probably on a single character get 40 boxes a day, I think, if you wanted, maybe more, but certainly several dozen of these boxes. And inside each box was like high-level crafting materials and rare motifs and things for things like, you know, Dominion style and all these.
I got a couple Aggelos pieces, which go for hundreds of thousands of AP. So for someone who doesn't PvP that often, that was one of the best times for me to get those things, because I'm like, wow, this cut out so much PvP that I now no longer have to do, because I got like 4 pieces of Aggelos motif pages.
Wow, yeah, exactly. Like you could get a lot, and it took a lot of time, and you could go nuts. I mean, I think I got, at my final count, I think I had something like 300 boxes. You know, over the course of that week, and that was using mostly my main, and then I used one of my alts as well for some of the stuff in Cyrodiil, because you could probably get 10 from each district per day alone just in the Cyrodiil towns, as long as you can fight your way to them. So yeah, I got loads and loads of stuff. And the great thing is that a lot of it's duplicate. And if you're in a big trading guild, that means big gold. So I probably made about 1 million gold selling some of this stuff. So it was a very productive week. A lot of that money went into buying missing pages and into housing stuff. And it was very good. It was a lot of fun. But the real reason why it was good, not necessarily because of the gold and getting these style pieces, but it was because it actually forced me to do a few things I haven't done for a while, like some of those little dailies and actually getting into some of the dailies in Hrothgar and Gold Coast and things, and learning the mechanics of those, because I actually never really did many of those. Some of them I only ever did once. So it was quite nice to sort of learn those and get some of the rewards too. So that was pretty good. Other bits of time, what have I done? Goodness, an awful lot. I've played a lot of Skyrim, I have to say. I decided that because I knew that I was going to be spending an even more large amount of time in ESO once Morrowind comes out and NDAs lift and stuff, I thought, right, play a lot of this. So I'm going to not play some of this for the time being. I'm going to play some Skyrim. I'm going to go back, start at the beginning, and create a new character and just start fresh and just do a fresh playthrough on Skyrim. And it's been a lot of fun. And I've about 35, 40 hours in, you know, sort of taking my time with the main quest, but just had the bit, you know, where the Stormcloaks and the Imperials at the negotiating table with the Greybeards arguing over who's going to have Riften and whatnot. Just got to that and done, you know, did the College of Winterhold. I've done all that, did all the companion stuff, just sort of keeping the main quests things for last. But it's probably been 2 or 3 years since I've properly put any real time into Skyrim, other than sort of loading a random save, which is one of my favorite ways to replay Oblivion and Skyrim, is to load a previous save randomly somewhere in the middle of my list of save games and just go and pick a few things to do, you know, because otherwise you know, every day you just see, you know, the cart scene at the beginning of the game and the, you know, the dragons and the escape. And as fun as that is, it's just not quite as interesting as doing things you've maybe only done once or twice. So.
Have you ever looked at that? There was an add-on at one point called like alternative life or alternative beginning or whatever, where it actually randomly, it kind of skipped that whole Helgen scene and randomly dropped you off at one of the freeholds, just like plop, and there you are.
No, I've never done that actually. I mean, I can see why that would be a lot of fun. I personally, I like going through my just picking a random save and doing that. But it's been, I played through Skyrim from start to finish and completed everything in the game twice. So this is sort of the third time doing that, and there's still stuff you miss because I only finished everything, like complete and total completionist level of stuff in Skyrim the very, very first time. Every tiny little quest, every dungeon, every area completely explored when it first came out. So there's still a lot of stuff that's been a long time since I've done. So that's been great. But doing it in this special edition has been quite an interesting experience actually, because I bought a 4K TV, a big 65-inch 4K Sony thing, as a bit of a gift to myself when we bought this house that we're in now. And
the house wasn't the gift.
Well, the house is a long-term gift, but I decided no, I'm going to buy a really massive TV and wire the gaming PC into it. So and then use the Xbox controller. But the great thing is that you can run Skyrim Special Edition in 4K in Ultra HD. So I've been playing this version of Skyrim on max settings in 4K resolution on this massive TV, and it is a whole different experience. It's wonderful. It's really, really good fun. So yeah, I've done quite a lot of that, and other than that, it's the usual stuff. Some daily writs, some Cyrodiil, largely playing solo these days. Back in Azura Star instead of True Flame.
Okay. Why are you in Azure? Is that the non-CP, or are you now CP?
Yeah.
Again? Oh, that's the non-CP campaign. Okay.
CP campaign. I don't know. I got a bit tired in True Flame, to be honest, and it just felt a bit more fun to run with people, but not in a group. But do it in Azura, where it's a little bit more of a level playing field, I feel.
Arkhaniir actually played this. I guess it's alternative life or another life, whatever. But he's like, the idea is you get to choose where you start in Skyrim. It asks you whether you're like a hunter in the wilds, or a member of a guild, or a patron of an inn. Alternative life. Yeah, that's what he says. Alternative life or something. So you can kind of be like, what do I want to be today? And that's where it dumps you based on that. So it skips the whole Helgen scene and all of that and just dumps you wherever it is that you thought you wanted to go.
Oh, that's neat. Okay, well, I might try when I finish this playthrough. I might try that the next time I do it. Although the next one I play, I'll probably do Morrowind again.
I actually,
because like certain big parts of Morrowind stand out in my memory, but other parts of it are just a complete, like, it will feel brand new if I played it again.
Right. For anyone who's actually interested as well, there's a I'll post it in this chat, or not in the chat. Well, I guess I can do that. Maybe if I still have it, I have to look. There was when Elder Scrolls Online came out, people were saying, if you're interested in trying Morrowind, there are a bunch of different mods that actually do update the graphics significantly. So, and you can actually, even if you don't like the play of it, because it does play a little different, you can actually update the play style where it regenerates. It makes it play like Skyrim. So it allows you to regenerate mana outside of like in rooms. Because if you remember in Morrowind, the only way you're going to regenerate mana in any way is by sleeping. That's the only way to get it. So it is a little harder, and it also does. There was an add-on called Hit Always On or something like that. Because if you remember, they did the old style D&D ish, the old game attack thing. Like you'd be swinging with a dagger, but if you had no skill, it'd be like miss, 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 hit, miss, miss. What it actually does is make it so that depending on your skill level, right? It affects your damage, but as long as the reticule is over the enemy, it will register a hit, and you're within range, so it always hits. That's the whole idea of it. It just, your damage is dependent more upon the level you have in the skill than otherwise. So it's definitely, if you're interested, I'll try to find the link for it. It was a Reddit post. And it does make Morrowind, especially if you just want to see the story, you really don't want to deal with the older play style. It makes it play almost identical to Skyrim, and the graphics update really does a good job. So it is a little difficult to set up, but there is it comes with a guide on how to do it. So I'll try to find that and post it in the show notes.
Oh, well, that's neat. I mean, the mods, there are some great graphic update mods for Oblivion as well that do very similar things that make a big difference. I mean, Morrowind was kind of the leading charge in allowing mods. I mean, it was poster child for how to do amazing mods back in the day. Still kind of is.
I mean, there's people who still mod Morrowind after 15 years. There's still people doing it. I mean, if you look at the TES renewal project alone, they're trying to put Morrowind in Skyrim, essentially, you know? So
Skywind. Is that the project?
Yeah, Skywind. Yeah, I think their overarching project is, the Elder Scrolls renewal project, because I guess the goal is that they're eventually going to do, all the older games, even Oblivion at some point. Less concerned with Oblivion because it's older, but, Morrowind and going all the way through. And sorry if anyone can hear my son. Apparently, my wife is fighting with him at the moment, and he is using his Thum to tear her apart. So
use Dragon Rend.
Use Dragon Rend, Ezra. Ezra, Dragon Rend. Dragon Rend. All right.
There we go.
What a cute kid. I love him to death. He's awesome. But yeah, I hear him upstairs. Now he got quiet. He's like, "Ooh, Dragon Rend. How do I do that?" He's like, he's sitting there thinking, "I don't have all the words yet. I got to go find them." But
go to the throat of the world.
Absorb it. Absorb them. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Like I said, with Morrowind, I know a lot of people are really hyped about Morrowind, specifically because of Morrowind from Elder Scrolls coming out. Albeit, I do actually kind of have a little bit of I guess this is a lore rant, if you will. But did you see the Twitter post that they put out for the game, where they're like,
they tweeted a few things about the game? I'll be honest.
All right, so the one that kind of got under my skin, okay, and the reason why it got under my skin is it's completely lore related. So they're like, essentially this is synopsis. They're like, congratulations, Morrowind, 15 years. Now join us for the next chapter of Morrowind in
Oh, can I guess why that annoys you?
Yeah, it's the previous chapter.
It's because it's 600 years before, and
yes.
In fact, this is the prequel, actually.
Yeah, this is a prequel. It's not the next chapter. It's a prequel. Yeah, that's... I know it's nitpicky, but I thought people might actually get, they might laugh at that more than be angry, because I'm sitting there going, my justification for hating it is the fact that it's not the next chapter. This would have been the previous chapter.
Yeah, several chapters previous, actually.
Yeah, a few chapters back, all right? So, yeah, that's my major gripe. I know it's kind of a fake gripe, but, I thought it was funny. When I first saw it, that was the very first thing that went through my head was, it's not the next chapter, it's a previous chapter. I know, kind of crazy. Arguing semantics here, but... so did you do anything else in Tamriel this past?
Probably did a ton of other stuff that I've forgotten about. I know that I got the Bane of the Gold Coast achievement for finishing everything in the Gold Coast, which I'd neglected to do, and the Pathfinder one as well.
Okay.
I think I got something for something else. What did I get? Look at my achievements. Oh, the Dwemer Style Master. I finally finished all the Dwemer style stuff. So.
Oh, nice. Did you actually find it in any Dwemer ruin, or did you just buy them?
The last one I bought, because I was hoping that it might be one of the ones that dropped out of these anniversary boxes, and it didn't. I was like, right, Dwemer chests, let's have you.
Well, honestly, I would have much rather had different motifs, because Dwemer stuff, at least on the US server, sells for next to nothing. Couple
thousand. They do. I just didn't know that I hadn't got it. It's only when I was looking at all these pages and what I got out of these boxes, and I saw Dwemer, I was like, one missing piece. How did that happen? So when the anniversary thing finished and I didn't get it, I just bought one. It was like 300 gold, 200 gold. It was pathetic. Yeah,
it was like, wow, I don't know why I didn't have this before. But yeah, that actually happened to me already with because I've been running IC. Everyone knows in our guild we run IC every Thursday. Except for this Thursday, because I was neck deep in a server, which I'll talk about during my tales, of course. But I was looking at it and I'm like, I honestly thought I had it, right? But then I looked at my achievements. It's like, you don't have pack style master. You're still missing, I think it was like pack maces or something like that. It was just one that I never had before. And I never really thought about it because I got so many from running IC related stuff that, every time I picked one up, it's like, you already know this. I'm like, okay, it sort of makes sense. I was never really actively looking till I was in my achievements one day and went, wait, I don't actually have the pack style master, and it was, I think Gallisner was nice enough. He got one. He's like, here you go, you're done. So finish that off. But I've had that happen too, where it's like one left and you almost forget about it because you get motif chapters and they all say like, you already know this. So over time you're just like, yeah, I must have them all, but you don't.
Pokemon pages.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see on the notes you had something about trials yet, right?
Oh yeah, basically I've pretty much done everything in this game. Right, I was looking on Misa achievements. I mean, not all the I don't have all the achievements, but in terms of, every dungeon, every area, everything, Cyrodiil, I don't know what I am, ranked 35 or something in there. Like, I'm sort of, it's a good time for Morrowind to be coming out because at least as far as Misa goes, it sort of is. There's not a lot to do with
not a lot of easy things to do, right? Yeah.
Not a lot of easy things to do, other than just over and over and over again doing the same things. With my brother, who does play, but doesn't play as often as I do, and I thought, you know what? To this day, I have never done any trial in the game ever. So that now is my thing to learn all the trials. On the EU Megaserver. So I'm going to need some help. I'm going to need to figure out builds and techniques and rotations and all stuff because, it's going to be a big one. But that's the next big thing.
This is where you, the Tales of Tamriel listener, can assist. If you run a Trials guild, maybe send Nate a message. Bring him along. Show him the ropes. Yeah. What is your handle in game, by the way?
You can search Miss Misa or Lanxon 101, Lanxon 101 on the European Megaserver.
All right,
and that would be amazing. I mean, I'm in a couple of guilds that do this, but even the guilds that I'm doing, they're sort of familiar with it, so you're not necessarily paying attention or able to pay attention to the characters and everything else you're doing, and there's sort of even a small level of assumption. That some of it. Right. Not literally none of it, which is my current level.
So
complete noob as far.
So Tales of Tamriel EU community, let's help Nate out here. Find if you do learning runs for trials, send him a message. See if you can get him on there. Teach him our ways, because I would love to have him brought, by the end of May when he's on here, because he's on here for pretty much all of May. By the end of May, I would love to hear one of your tales going, I went through a trial. I would love to hear that story. So this is where you guys, the Elder Scrolls Online EU community and listeners of Tales of Tamriel, can assist us with this. Let's take Nate through some trials. It'll be great.
I'll swap you for some lore knowledge.
There, he can regale you with the lore. There you go. If you bring it, give him like a day notice of where he's going, and he'll go find lore about the trial for you and regale you with lore.
You got it.
I pretty much just made a promise on your behalf, so now you're beholden to it. So prepare.
It's an easy promise to keep, to be honest.
Yeah, he's like, I would have done that anyway. So all right. Nice. Yeah, and trials are a lot of fun. I know they can be kind of intimidating for players who've never done them before. But the normal ones aren't that difficult. Like, they're really not that bad. And yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of feeling like you know how to do the stuff, because they do ramp up in difficulty pretty quickly once you get moving on these things. So yeah, definitely help Nate out. That would be amazing, because I would love to actually hear you say, hey, I went through my first trial. That'd be really cool. So I guess that's the end of your tales for this week, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Other than boring stuff you don't know about, that's the end.
Well, speaking of boring stuff that you don't know about, my tales is going to be pretty dreadfully short, unfortunately. As some of you know, of course, I went through a data center migration at work. So real life work, that kind of ate up all of my 2 weeks ago. I think Thursday it was 2 weeks, the 21st of April, we started this migration. And that's pretty much all we did, right? Like, that was it. From Thursday till Sunday, I pretty much did not leave the office. After that, it was a matter of, how do I want to say it? A matter of, yeah, it was just a real busy week. So I got very little game, a little bit here and there, which was cool. So I got to play a little bit. But then, on Sunday of last week, I got a rather sucky message from our provider, our host provider that hosts DungeonCrawlerNetwork.com, that they suspended our account. And I was like, okay, whatever. They're like, you need to contact our terms of service account. I wasn't real worried. I thought someone who might have put in like a copyright claim or something like that, which is not a real big deal because, in all honesty, I have written permission for all the stuff we use. So it would have been like, all right, I just got to clear up anything. It's not going to be a big deal. Well, I contacted, and here the long and short of it was they disabled our website because we moved too much traffic. We have too much stuff, even though they're like, you have unlimited hosting, but we move so much traffic that they were trying to strong arm us into having to go with an entirely different server hosting package, which is completely out of our price range. And I was like, well, in all honesty, you guys, we're within the rules. You don't have any markings, but apparently there was some clause in there that it's up to their discretion on a 1-by-1, that if they see too much traffic, they can make changes, which was kind of crappy. So they would not reactivate our account. They would not let me into our cPanel. So I've spent the past, since Sunday, pretty much from when I got home from work. Sunday it was pretty much all day, but then it was from when I got home from work until 1 or 2 in the morning every night, rebuilding the entire website from scratch. Because I had nothing. I was able to download at least a couple of the MP3 files from our Patreon because that's where I upload it for, the early access for our Patreon supporters. I was able to get some files there. I had to rip MP3s from our old videos off YouTube and a bunch of different stuff. So that's what I did. So I had to rebuild all of our RSS feeds. I had to rebuild the entire website from scratch. So a lot of my gameplay, unfortunately, that, is taken up because of all this extra work that I've had to do in order to make sure that you guys could download the episodes that you guys so love, or so I hope. As of right now, the website's back up. And actually, I was able to, I got some help from Stormlords. He was able to help me and is currently helping me with a bunch of other tasks that I want to do for the website. So thank you, Stormlords, for that. Shout out there. But the website's up and functional. All the articles are there and functional. The only thing that's still missing is some of our older episodes for Tales of Tamriel is still not available. I think we have episodes... I want to say 100 to 140, to current are there, but the earlier episodes are still not there. So please bear with me while I am having to go through and upload the new MP3 files and then as well relink them to the old posts. So that's going to take me a little bit of time.
Do you have those? Do you have those 100 episodes already, or do you still need the files?
Oh, I do have them. I was able to get them through various different means. I was able to download a couple of them from Patreon. I was able to, the ones I couldn't get from Patreon, I was able to go to our YouTube, download the MP4 video, and then just strip the audio out of it. So yeah, I do have them all, and I now have a local copy of all of our episodes. So if anything were ever to happen again, you know, I have something, right? I have them again. It shouldn't, and this problem shouldn't be as big as it was. But yeah, it was unfortunate.
That's great effort, amazing effort. You see, that's what you get, people. That's what you get. You get this level of effort going on behind the scenes.
It was a lot. There were a couple times where I was pretty darn depressed. I was just sitting here going, because of course we've been building this website like over 3 years, so having to rebuild it 100% from scratch. I mean, even a lot of the articles. Thank goodness for Google and their history. I had to go on Google and find cached versions of websites of our web pages to try to rebuild everything. That's how I had to do it. It was awful. But thankfully, we're now back up and running as a website as a whole. And like I said, some of the older Tales episodes are not there. Our other podcasts, they're all there. Of course, they were a lot easier to do because, you know, a lot of our other shows don't have quite the legacy that Tales does. So I only had to do, you know, 20 episodes for those, not 140 something. So yeah, I will get them all back, but it, you know, obviously now that I actually have it, I've just been like, I'm going to take a little bit of time to myself. And, you know, just try to rest a little bit. So I will get the other episodes there. It just may be a little bit. So if you are trying to go back and watch some of our older episodes, just note that I will have them up as soon as I can. It just might be just a little bit. All right. So, and as of right now, like I said, all current episodes, new episodes will be there. It's just going to be the older ones that, as I have 20 minutes where I'm, you know, not trying to relax or play a game or something, I will, okay, let's upload 4 or 5 episodes and just do it like that every couple days and try to get everything back. So they're not gone. I have the episodes. It's just, you know, it is what it is. So take that with a grant. And I really do appreciate everyone's patience while I was trying to get all of this back up. So hopefully you don't feel too jilted or anything of that nature, and that, you know, we can go from there. From what I actually got to play, and it was actually funny because I was, just like you, I went and did the Naryu quest line on the character that you see right here on the screen, my Dragon Knight, because you told me the other, like a week or two ago, that is what you wanted to do, that you're like, we're going to talk Naryu. I said, absolutely, we're talking Naryu. So I went and was doing all the Naryu quest line, the Lodos Plague in Deshawn, and followed her around. That was the one I did. Now, obviously, I haven't done the Gold Coast Naryu version, so I'm at a loss there. But I was able to see the love Naryu today on her. Been playing the Dragon Knight a little bit. I'm still not, I mean, I know I'm early, but I don't know. The Dragon Knight feels so weird to me. I just don't, it feels odd when I'm not on my Templar. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Nate, do you have those issues when you play other characters?
Well, I only really played two main characters. One's a Magblade and one's a Stam DK, and Misa is the Stamina Dragon Knight and just feels pathetic right now. So,
well, I was gonna say, isn't that? I was gonna say, is it Stamina Dragon Knights in a bad spot right now, or?
Yes. Well, they are if you're doing what I'm trying to do.
Oh.
They're not great right now. They're not great.
I see.
Particularly when you previously were trying to deal significant damage in Cyrodiil. It's been a bad time for us Stamina Dragon Knights, but you know, hey ho, Warden, blah blah blah, paywall, blah blah blah.
Well, I mean,
we're gonna get very homogenized for a bit. While
right.
Everyone in Cyrodiil is a warden and chucking bears around. You know, there should be a clause somewhere to say you can't.
Very punny. I like it.
Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, we can say, you know, like, other gameplay has been Morrowind beta for me. We can say that. We can't talk about a lot. There's NDA, but they did talk. We can talk balance changes. Have you been seeing a lot of balance issues?
It's hard to do a direct comparison, to be honest, because what you're doing is just very, very, very different from what I'm doing with my main characters. They're not direct comparisons, so it'd be unfair to compare a sort of Magicka Warden to a Stamina Dragon Knight in the current build. So it's hard to see those changes bear out, to be honest, right now.
No, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I know major thing is I don't even really care about the Warden. I know some people complain about the changes to the utility of Wardens, the fact that, they have a sustainable way of getting like major mending, stuff like that. I don't know. Whatever. They were designed as a group class. Like, it all depends on how it works out. But of course, during the PTS, things are going to change. And I played MMOs for long enough to know that these things are, having your class completely redone. But I guess I'm not as jaded because I've been jaded for so long because I played a Templar. So our resource generation sucked all the time. So now I feel a little happier that everyone else is in the same boat as me now. Misery loves company. I'm like, I've been dealing with this for 3 years. Welcome to my own personal hell. And now my hell feels a little better because everyone else is here.
Well, that's what I've always said. If I'm going to hell, all my favorite bands are going to be there, so it's not a terrible place to be.
Yeah,
it's the real meat will be, when this stuff hits the live server and when people are able to do direct comparisons with their characters, we'll start to see some really interesting commentary, I think, on some of the changes. But that's probably about as much as is fair to say without getting ourselves in trouble.
That's true. Absolutely. Yeah, we want to adhere to the NDA, and we would never break the NDA here on Tales of Tamriel. It's not going to happen. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think there's some overreaction overall but again, a lot of people who play this game have never played other MMOs, so they're like, oh, these big sweeping changes. I'm like, all right, I played World of Warcraft for 8 years. Every single every single time they did an expansion, World of Warcraft is known for this, where they pretty much redo the class system every patch, or not every patch, every expansion. So every time they do an expansion, every like 2 years or whatever, they overhaul everything to the point where the class isn't even recognizable anymore. Like. Mm-hmm. So whenever you're hopping in for a new, whatever the latest new raid is or the new expansion, you are essentially spending several weeks learning your class because they're like, they remove whole abilities, they add new system mechanics for classes, they they removed baseline abilities from us before, where once upon a time you used it all, it was part of your rotation, and then they're like, you know what? We're no longer going to do that anymore. This is now going to be a proc thing, or it's only going to be available to one spec, not every spec anymore. Like, that's what they do. So I'm used to that level of everything is changing, right? So it was never really surprising for me. It's like, all right, I'll take...
Similar stuff has happened in ESO. They've done things where things have changed from being Magicka to Stamina, or been magic damage to physical damage, and things like that can make a real difference to how you play, particularly if you play in PvP, and I'm sure if you're playing Trials as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That can cause hell.
Oh, yeah, having to rethink your group meta. Absolutely.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does happen. So, it is what it is. It doesn't really bother me. Like I said, I'll take a few weeks. I'll learn my class. It won't be much different for me because I'm not jumping on the Warden wagon because I just don't like the aesthetic. I've always been a Templar. I will always be a Templar. So, that's how it's going to roll. But in all honesty, maybe it's not such a jump for me because Templars have so little resource regeneration innately. We have really good resource regeneration in a group setting, but we can't use it ourselves. Like the spears are wonderful.
They're a lifesaver, those spears.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but a Templar themselves can't use them. Like, you can't use your own thing because it's a synergy. So our synergy abilities for group is amazing. But unless you're running with another Templar, you can't actually use the spears yourself. So, for stamina, that was just something where I was just like, okay, I know I'm gonna run out of stamina in like 10 seconds. So, during the anniversary event, man, I did the same thing as you. I didn't have as much time, so I had to figure out what can I do that's quick. Well, I have tons of crafting materials because what do I like doing? I like crafting, right? So I pretty much set up all my characters to be able to do writs. I parked them next to the writ guys. I did 6 or 7 characters doing 6 writs a day because I do the writs on my main. Then I'd hop to my next character, do crafting writs on her, and then hop on down the list and just did crafting writs. And that's how I got a lot of those holiday event stuff going on. So, yeah, it was a very lucrative time for me because I got a lot of materials and I got a lot of motif pages that I didn't have. A couple Thieves Guild, 4 or 5 Akaviri, which I was like, yes, because Akaviri you might not think about too much, but because it requires AP, I do so little PvP in this game that anytime it can be bought only with AP, it's kind of like, because I don't do it that often, so I don't have unlimited reserves. If it was gold, well, even gold, I'm kind of a miser with my gold, so I don't like buying motif pages if I can avoid it. But if it were something I could farm from the Dwemer stuff when it first came out, I made a farming list of all the Dwemer ruins in the game, and I would actually just do circuits, run all the way around. Yeah. To get stuff.
Yeah, you used to talk about doing that, and it was great.
Well, it was one of those things where when Thais was actively playing, and we were still playing together, we didn't do quests without one another, right? But I still wanted to play, so she's like, I don't care what you do, whatever. And this was back even, when there were still veteran ranks. I had actually pretty much maxed out my character only by doing these Dwemer Ruin runs because that's how I got all my experience, because I just kept running them over and over and over again. And that's what I did. And by the time I realized it, it's like, I'm VR whatever already, VR 10 or VR 12 at the time, and she was still VR 4 or whatever the case may be. It was really funny, but that's how I did all my stuff.
I remember because I listened to a couple of old episodes quite recently, and there's an episode, it's just you and Thais, and you leveled up and she didn't because you'd done something without her.
And she was pissed.
He was angry for the entire episode. I'm sure only half-heartedly, but also at least half genuinely.
Oh yeah. She
like, I got you leveled up without me.
Yep.
That's my Thais impression, by the way.
Yeah,
which
very good.
I think very accurate. Man, I mean, fair play to her. That was cruel. That was criminal.
I know. She was pretty upset at me that day, and I'll say, she was kind enough to hit me with a bag of Valencia oranges. That would, there was no bruise, so no one else would know. But no, I'm just kidding. She was not very happy with me that day, and I don't even remember what it was that I was doing. But at that point in time, it was before the birth of our son, so we were still playing together. But apparently, she went to bed, or I don't know what it was, but I did something else without her.
Is you had gone, it was something really simple, like you'd gone and discovered a couple of new locations, and you had earned the XP for that, and it had just tipped you over the edge.
Yeah.
So, and it was like you were farming, or you were doing something like that, and
Yep. No, that does sound like, that's all I was doing, just running around doing something simple, maybe even I was farming ore or something, and I see Arkhaniir in chat going, I remember that. Yeah, I was probably just farming ore or something, and in the process of farming ore, I got close to maybe like a point of interest or something and got the experience. But up until that time, because we played 100% together, it was whenever one of us would ding to a level, it would be simultaneous. And then while playing, all of a sudden it was ding, I leveled, and she's like, I still don't have. And yeah, you were playing without me? Like, I don't know the answer to this. Yeah. I do remember that. That was pretty funny. But yeah, that was pretty much all I got to do. I got to play a little bit with Naryu. I mean, I'm playing right now doing this. I was able to log in a few times and get my, because it's something that I always do. I do my crafting writs. It's something that I do. I like doing the crafting writs, and I really heavily focus on that, and that's what I've been doing mostly for this week. Because obviously, like I said, for those who know the story, my game time has been a mess. So like, what I've been doing is, even the crafting writs, I did it while I was like uploading files. It's like, oh, I'm uploading 10 MP3s. It's gonna take 10 minutes. Okay, all right. Well then, let's log on to ESO and do a crafting writ or something, you know. So that's pretty much what it was that I've been doing. So that's kind of the end of our tales, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to actually, before we do news, we are going to talk about one thing from news that they did, and then it kind of pars in with Tales. They were asking with Morrowind coming out, which happens to be like almost on the 15-year anniversary of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. They were asking on Twitter and stuff like that for what were our favorite memories of Morrowind, and do you have any particular memories from when you were playing Morrowind, Nate?
Well, the overlasting one is when you meet, is it Orgnum, the Dwemer guy?
Oh, Bagram Yaghrif.
Yeah, and the reason that's a favorite memory is because at the first time that happened, like the significance of that was, I would say, lost on me, but it's not the same as had I have never played Morrowind and then went back and saw that scene for the first time. So I would pick out that as because it's, the whole Dwemer, I say story, lack of story really, is one of my favorite parts of the game. Yes.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. It's, we did an interview with, Ashes of Creation, an upcoming MMO developer, this past week. And we were talking about story in the world, and he was saying, he's been very, he didn't want to tell a lot of story about the game specifically because he wants people to explore it, and he likes that mystery. And I took the opportunity to, of course, talk about Morrowind and Elder Scrolls in general by going, yeah, I like that sense of mystery. One of my favorites in lore is from the Elder Scrolls series, with the fact that the developers never tell us exactly what happened. They hint, but they never tell us, and it's a great hook because every time a game comes out, we're all like, I want to learn more about Dwemer. But in the back of our heads, I can almost say every single one of us never really wants to find out exactly without a shadow of a doubt, because the mystery is what draws so much. I would be very disappointed if Todd the God Howard came out and was like, this, without a doubt, is definitively what happened to the Dwemer. I'd be like, wow, now I know. Oh,
I agree, and you can do a lot. You could do a lot to answer that question without answering the question. Little hints. A new book, and it'd be very difficult to do that in Elder Scrolls Online in its current form, because anything that was on a wide level understood in the game, lore-wise, could only be explained away in the fact that no one in Oblivion or Skyrim ever mentioned it as, it was forgotten, or, no one wrote that down.
I knew I should have had my notebook with me, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean...
You couldn't really do that.
Yeah.
However, you could have Elder Scrolls 6 Dwemer, for example, but I think it would kill one of the, the big mysteries. Because you'd have to answer it.
Right.
You'd have to answer it. So no, I leave it unanswered.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever watch Futurama? Have you ever seen Futurama?
Have I?
Yeah.
Have I watched it too much?
Well, you know the one where I guess it was, I forget what the whole premise was. It like the what if machine, or the professor finds something and he discovers the answers to all questions, like what the universe, like how the universe was created, and then he's all depressed because he's like, I lived my life for the questions and now I have nothing. There's nothing else for us to explore. And honestly, it's weird, but I would feel that way if I knew without a shadow of a doubt the exact reason the Dwemer disappeared. I mean, I would have that exact same moment where he's, when he discovers like the reason for the universe, he's like, Eureka! Like it was exciting. And then afterwards he's like, oh, but now I have no more questions, and then you'd hit that depressed moment of, wow, now I have nothing else. Right.
Yeah, and there are things you can do. The big question is, why did the Dwemer disappear? All of them, all at the same time, without any explanation, without any trace. Like that's the overarching question. This huge society of dwarves, elves. What I'm trying to think what do they call them?
Dwemer?
Like,
or what are you referring to? Like just the
there's a term.
Mer?
No. I can't believe it's because it's late here and I'm totally blanking here. But there's what? Forget it. I'll look it up and we'll come back to this in future. When I remember the term I'm trying to think of here,
okay.
It'll all make sense. But the fact is, you could still do a lot with them, and explain a lot, about their daily lives and their societies. And there are books, that do talk about that in all the games, but just not answering the question of how they disappeared, you could do.
Well, I mean, and that is part of one of the reasons why we have all this Dwemer stuff and why it's such a mystery is because when they disappeared, the thing is, and the thing that I like most about it is it's not a one thing. We know that they disappeared. Like, we know that at the Battle of Red Mountain, all of a sudden they just vanished. It's not like I forget what I was reading. I think it was like World War Z or something like that. So it's not even really related to fantasy. But they talked about in that book, before the zombie apocalypse or whatever, that the North Koreans just went into a hill one day and they just never came back out. Like slowly and surely, like one by one, we start seeing less and less as they just, went into their underground bunkers. This is, and we don't really know, like, this one, like they were the Velothi and the Dwemer were facing off in battle, like face to face. Like there's some Dunmeri guy swinging his sword, and all of a sudden it just slashes through thin air because they disappeared. We know that. We just don't know what the cause of it was, and because of that, we do have a lot of Dwemer information because they left. It's not like they had time to hide anything. Like, I'm pretty sure most of them didn't think that they were going to disappear. They were planning on going home that night after the battle, licking their wounds or whatever the case. So everything that they had been working on is still there. It's just they
aren't.
They aren't. Yes. So it's neat how it's not like modern anthropology and stuff like that in a lot of cases where we're like, how did these people live? We know how they lived. Like, there's documented evidence of how they lived and what they did. It's just we don't know what happened to them.
And neither does Yagran when you meet him.
Well, yeah.
So I forget it was something like he wasn't on Earth. He like on Nirn. He
wasn't.
Some else. So like they all vanished, and it's kind of like coming home and just finding everyone has vanished. But he was none the wiser.
Yeah, well, and that's what they talked about. The Dwemer had this ability. They were known to have this ability of trans-dimensional travel, and he even said, "I was not on this plane of existence when the Battle of Red Mountain happened. I was elsewhere. When I came back, everyone's gone." So,
yeah, and they had some mad stuff. Dwemer had airships.
Yeah,
like they had. There's a thing in Redguard where there's an airship.
Yeah, no, they were insanely advanced as a civilization. They were very cruel as well. Like that was something that they mentioned, that they were very cruel. Evidenced by what they did with the Falmer, the snow elves, when they tried to flee and hide with the Dwemer. The Dwemer were like, sure, come on in, we'll take care of you, and then it's like slowly feeding them poisons, so that way they go blind. Another evidence is if 36 lessons of Vivek.
Oh, here we go.
He talks about the Netchamen's wife, and when they realize that the egg, as they call it, the egg that holds Vivek is within this Netchamen's wife, they do horrible things to her. They try to cut it out with knives. They try to burn her and get the egg out. Like, they were essentially strapping her down and cutting her apart with knives in order to try to get the egg out of her. Like, it's dark what the Dwemer were doing. They were not good people, so to speak. Like, you know what I mean? It's dark. And eventually, in order to spare his quote-unquote mother any more pain, he causes her to go into a coma. And then when they finally remove the egg, he lets her die, right? You know? So, yeah, kind of interesting, right? Like, they were not kind elves. They were dark. They were very... I shouldn't say dark. They were very logical. They were essentially
they were prone to conflict, shall we say?
Yeah, they were atheists too. They didn't believe in any divinity whatsoever. Or I shouldn't say atheists. They were agnostic. They knew there was something out there, but they worshipped no gods. They believed the Dwemer themselves could create the power. Hence the medium that they tried to create. Calcer, shades. Did I say shades or did I say lessons? I don't remember what I said anymore. When I
lesson.
Said, okay, good, because that's the actual word.
Yeah. And speaking of words, by the way, I had to Google the term that I forgot earlier. Deep elves.
Deep elves.
Like that was the simple term that somehow escaped me. That's what I was trying to go for. That's one of the ways that they were described. Anyway, that was annoying me for about 10 minutes. So I had to Google the answer.
Well, Deep Elves is actually just the literal translation of Dwemer. That's exactly what it is. I know exactly what you're talking about now. Yeah, like the Dwemer literally are... Dwemer means deep elves. Because Mer is, of course, elf, is the elf form. And I mean, if you look at it... Dunmer was, I think, changed elves or something like that is like the literal translation because they were changed from what they were originally. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Now, lore. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit of lore that you didn't even know you wanted. But we're going to hop into some of the news, and then we're going to get into even more lore, so stay tuned. First up on the news docket is, as soon as I scroll up on the list as I'm getting killed, login timers.
Login times, yeah. This is just something that I wanted to mention briefly, largely just to see if I'm the only one that's experiencing this. But I have noticed over the last couple of weeks that the amount of time it takes to go from typing in a password to getting to the character selection to then getting through requesting character load and getting to the game, it is a lot slower. A lot slower.
It's not just you. Even before the stream, I tried to boot up the game. And while we were, you might have thought a lot of that conversation you and I had were just catching up. It was actually me stalling for time while I'm waiting to make sure the game would actually load.
It's really frustrating, to be honest. It's frustrating. So I wanted to mention it just to make sure it wasn't just me or it wasn't just EU. And I have seen people talking about it on the forums as well. But I think it needs addressing because it feels like such a drag to log in sometimes. And it's been particularly annoying when you're playing Skyrim off an SSD and it loads in like 9 seconds.
Right.
From not loaded to being in the game. It's quite jarring to go back to that, but there was that. And the other thing is there was that I put in news was just the extended downtime that's happened recently, because for the last couple of patches on the games, these servers have been down for hours. And while it's not uncommon in an MMO for servers to be offline for a period of time each week, in Europe, particularly because they do it in the daytime. They don't do it overnight. They take them offline at about 8 o'clock in the morning in London time. And sometimes they're back around lunchtime. But for the last couple of weeks, they've been offline until the end of the afternoon, almost early evening. And, 6-7 hours of offline time. I just think it's kind of unacceptable, to be honest, and really very, very frustrating, particularly when, you see people on Twitter in particular using very unpleasant language to vent their frustration and talking about compensation and extra game time. And I sort of think, oh, calm down. But at the same time, I think, well, actually, if you think about you're paying for 30 days of time, and if you're in the UK and you can't play for basically the whole of the day, I actually think, maybe you should be given a little bit of time back or a bit of time at the end of the year that totals all the downtime they had as just goodwill. I don't know. It's sort of when it's happened 2 weeks in a row, it's frustrating. And I emailed Zos just to sort of get a bit of a sense for why this is recently, because normally the downtime is a lot less than this. But it seemed to affect the European Megaserver worse than the US one, because they often go offline at the same moment, although obviously it's early middle of the night for the US, where it's morning for Europe.
Right.
But the Europe ones were offline even after the American ones went back online. So a lot of people in Europe always feel that Zos, being a US company, always favor the US, and Europe kind of gets stuck with, the more inconvenient times and the longer maintenance period and things. So I emailed them and said, right, I've seen a lot of this stuff online. What's the deal? And I've got a response if you want to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Zos sent me, which I think they also posted to the forums. Once in a while, we have to do some extended work to our data center, and sometimes it takes longer than it should due to unintended consequences. Today's downtime was required to upgrade parts of the data center in preparation for Morrowind's launch. It took longer than we thought because we ran into a couple of issues relating to network security that was preventing different parts of the network talking to each other. It's never fun for anyone when we have extended downtime like this, but it's always for a good reason. We try to schedule downtime at the least populated time for the game, brackets, remember that ESO is worldwide, and downtime will always inconvenience some players no matter when it happens. We always strive to get everything back up and running quickly and do everything we can to maintain Windows, to keep maintenance windows as short as possible. Which is a very sugar-coated way of dodging the fact that it was down all day if you were in Europe. But
but that's a PR answer. It was definitely a PR.
It's a very PR answer, and you would expect it. It came from one of the PR team.
Yeah.
But that said, I wanted to raise it, and I think better communication could be done. I think something could be done when these like all day downtime maintenance patches happen. It wouldn't take a lot to just calm some of that hate on Twitter, and from people who feel like they've really lost out. And you often see people like, oh, I had a day off today and I was gonna play such and such, and that's a tangible annoyance for someone, particularly if they're a subscriber to ESO Plus, and it's like, well, all right, if I wasn't paying you, fair enough, but I've just lost 1/30 of what I've paid you for today. And I do think for ESO Plus, a little bit of love could be shown for those players. But hey, as Ag says, it is what it is. And
I understand the frustration, and I'm not saying it just to be like this, because honestly, I just went through a data center migration, right? I know crap can go wrong. Hence why I was working like 14-hour days for like 2 weeks, okay? Like, I know crap can go wrong. But with that being said, as a person who's doing that, I'm still getting paid. I got paid for it. I don't feel like compensation is not necessarily a bad thing. But I honestly also believe that if you're ESO Plus, it should be ESO Plus only. Like those Philistines, I had other words, but I don't want to say it, that are not paying, well, you can go sit on a Dwemer for all I care.
Yeah, I mean, I would extend the claw of sympathy a little more, in that they only have the game because they paid for it.
Right.
So even though they're not subbing, they have still paid for something they can't use. And I think it's a little bit about communication. And I think that, if this thing was super, super regular, like it was every week, it was off for an entire day, that is different. But I do at least think that, yeah, for, ESO Plus people, it could be made a little less sore by doing something about it. But
even if it was just for the time that you were down, it doesn't even have to be a lot. Like if you were down, like if you come out and say, we're going to be down 4 hours, right? And it becomes 8. You can run a SQL script and adjust the end time of everyone who's playing for ESO Plus by 4 hours. Because that's what it is. It's not from when you click your credit card, it's not okay, exactly 12 midnight on the 1st is, when it's going to cut off. No, if you did it at 6 o'clock at night, and 6 o'clock at night, 30 days later is when it's going to go off, right? So why not just run a script to, add 4 hours to all ESO Plus members?
Well, you wouldn't even need to do it on a weekly basis. You could do it every month, and you just say, well, this is the amount of time the servers were offline this month, and just round it up to the nearest day.
Sure.
Or round it down. If it was offline for, this month, I don't know, it's quite a lot, but just give everyone a day of bonus time. Is that going to make a difference if that makes a difference to Zos's bottom line, then they're in trouble.
The game's in bigger trouble than we thought. Yeah,
so
exactly.
Like if they, it would be an easy fix, or once every 3 months, just add it up and just say, right, well, the servers are offline for this for good reason, and it is good reason.
It is.
Like, that's the thing. Like, even without knowing this patch, like, they do not want those servers offline any longer than the players do. In fact, I'd argue they want it offline less than the players do, because they have to deal with the hate from the players that it affects, and that is a significant bummer, particularly if you're in charge of running these things or if you're a community manager.
Right.
So, they don't want that, and it's not going to be off for a minute longer than it needs to be. But at the end of the day, not everybody knows that.
Yeah.
Not everybody knows that this is an MMO thing. I'm not a long-time MMO player, but I've played enough to know that servers go offline every week or every couple of weeks for some maintenance, and that's just what you do. There's no alternative. It's not like an email server where everything's mirrored and duplicated. These things are either on or they ain't. Right. So it has to be done.
It does.
It's communication and token gestures that just keeps people sweet.
Yeah, exactly. Because I can tell you as as one of those guys who does server maintenance, because that is my day job. Oh, I sure as hell don't want to take that. I don't like doing it at all. I don't want to do it. If I have to stay late because of something went wrong, I am crabby. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't freaking want to be here. I want to go home, But unfortunately, this stuff happens, right? So, but I do agree. Like, maybe not so much on the one-offs, but the fact this is specifically with EU has been happening a few times. And again, they're running into issues, but it's with the EU data center. So why is the EU data center not an exact mirror to the US one? I don't know. Without looking at this stuff, but at which point, since it only seems to be affecting EU, and it really is only affecting EU, they maybe need to look at their data center and find out.
Well, the thing is in the EU. I think it's in Germany, and it didn't used to be.
Frankfurt.
When the game first started, there were 2 mega servers, but they were both located in America.
Yep.
And then a little bit after launch, they built an entirely new data center in Europe, to deal with latency issues and pings and stuff, which didn't affect me that much because I think they were East Coast in the US to begin with, and we're about as close to the East Coast as you can be in Europe. And they moved them. So they are physically different buildings and different teams doing this stuff. They're it's not like they're next door or it's just, it's all in the same building. It's just 2 different racks of servers. So, again, I totally forgive the difference in time. It's just annoying. It makes you wonder, therefore, why they have to take them offline at the same time. Like, just take the Europe one offline at the same relative hour as the US. And
I would think that as well, but this makes me wonder whether or not what makes me think is that they don't have a competent team in Frankfurt, that the U.S. team is handling both maintenances. That's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong.
That's a good answer if it's all software. With these patches, the reason I think it might be different is because it might be, physically hardware drives, disk drives. I mean, anyone who knows about how server systems work, like it's giant sacks of very thin computers all stacked up in racks in giant rooms. It may well be that they're physically putting more stuff into these machines to have them run. So,
generally speaking, but you would think that the data centers would see. And I'm coming from a different group where you want uniformity in your hosting provider, especially when you're doing these kinds of stuff, because you don't want to have that variable of I go to install something and all of a sudden it doesn't work the same way because the back end SAN is no longer the same. It's not replicating data the same way. Therefore, we have to have a whole new coding team go in and correct the way that it's replicating. You don't want that. That is not something you want. So I'm thinking that the hardware needs to be identical. Like they're essentially buying the exact same hardware, and then they just shipped it to Frankfurt. Because the Frankfurt, it's just a data center. They are renting out space in Frankfurt. That's all it is. It was a big empty warehouse. They rent out server space, and that's where it's at. And I would assume that they were trying to keep the same hardware so that way there's no... it's pretty much a copy-paste of what we're putting here is what we're going to put there. I have no proof one way or the other, so please don't say this is the gospel, this is theory only, because I don't know. I'm not privy to their data center setups. It could be they rented space in Frankfurt, and the Frankfurt guys are like, this is what we use. Good luck, make your stuff work. It's not outside the realm of possibility, but, I would, as a data center system admin, I would want the exact same software, at least in that regard, so that way I could remove as many variables as I could from the equation of why didn't this work? But, maybe that's not always an option. I think that's the end of the news. We're going to roll right on into because we're actually still moving along, but we're going to roll into the last section for this episode of Tales of Tamriel, the thing that we've all wish was in our lives more, Naryu. That's right.
Oh, yes.
Nate, I'm just going to let you go nuts with this, and I'm going to try to throw in where I can, if that's good with you.
Yeah, this is absolutely fine with me now. The little bit of reasoning behind this. So, for those of you who aren't aware, in the new chapter, Morrowind, you are going to be spending a whole hell of a lot of the time with Naryu. As the trailers, that's not breaking NDA, the trailers have made it very clear you're going to be spending a lot of time with a woman called Naryu Virian. So I thought, well, wouldn't it be a good idea for us to spend some time on this episode kind of getting a bit behind the scenes and
getting behind Naryu? Oh, yeah.
Getting behind Naryu. And
you just had to pause there for a second because as the thought went by,
yeah, a little bit. Not for the first time. And really looking at, who is Naryu? Because I think she's an interesting character. She's one of these characters that throughout Elder Scrolls Online in particular, she's a recurring character, kind of like Darren Gutierre. Mm-hmm. Is this Gutierre?
It's French. I don't know.
Yeah, that guy, the guy that Ag loves and I don't like at all. I think he's an arse. As we say.
Dude, be 100% honest with Darren Gutierre. The one reason why I like him, have you ever seen the show Archer?
I've seen episodes of Archer.
He reminds me of Archer. That's why I like him so much. I know. Yeah.
And like Stibbons with Lady Clarice.
Stibbons.
Good old Stibbons. There's a great Stibbons quest in Hrothgar, incidentally, which I also did this week. I don't know if you've done that, but
I've done it on alts. Yes, I have done it, and I know which one you're talking about. I love Stibbons.
Yeah, he's great. So you run into these characters, and Razumdar obviously is a firm favorite, I think, for most people. You run into these characters all the way through, but this is the first DLC I think where it's around one person. So I thought, let's learn a little bit about her because she's neat. So we'll start at the beginning, which is basically what she is. She's a member of a group, as I think people know, called the Morag Tong, who are a group of assassins, kind of operating within, or did operate, sort of within the law in Morrowind, and they've been around since I think the first era, certainly predating anything you see in the game.
They predate the Dark Brotherhood too.
Well, they do, and the Dark Brotherhood has been referred as the child of the Morag Tong, which we will come to as well. And they were contract killers basically, and they existed in Morrowind largely to sort out disputes between the houses in Morrowind, which again I think will become clear in the chapter, and obviously in the main game Morrowind, people know this. And yeah, the Dark Brotherhood, I mean, they're referred to often as like a splinter group, and they're a little different. I mean, one of the main differences between the Dark Brotherhood and the Morag Tong, apart from the fact that the Dark Brotherhood are still around in Skyrim, which the Morag Tong basically isn't, is they were not like a government sanctioned sort of group of problem solvers. They will basically kill anyone except each other, and they will operate across all of Tamriel, whereas I think the Morag Tong were primarily Morrowind focused.
They are primarily Morrowind. Now, they're illegal within Morrowind, but only within Morrowind.
Exactly. So, one of the things that's interesting about Naryu is that, she's very nervous because being associated with somebody from the Morag Tong is pretty dangerous. Certainly being in the Morag Tong is very, very dangerous. So when you first meet her, and you meet her in a quest in Deshaan. So if you started out your character in Ebonheart Pact, you get to Deshaan pretty quickly. In fact, isn't it? I think it's a second zone, isn't it?
It is the second zone in the line, yes, and she's pretty much one of the very first characters you meet. Period.
Yeah,
in Deshaan.
Certainly in terms of the extra, these sort of what I call main NPCs, which is Stibbons and Razumdar and Naryu and Darren Gutierrez and those guys. And you meet her during a quest, a very big series of quests, actually, about the Lodos Plague, and specifically in the village of Narsis. Just to go back in time, because I think you covered this on like episode 4 or something of Tales of Tamriel. The Lodos Plague is infecting this little village called Narsis, and you're looking to solve it. And you find out why eventually about... I think we can talk a few spoilers at this point.
At this point, with the base game where it's at, yes. If you have not, at this point, I guess I'm fine with talking spoilers on a lot of things, maybe not the brand new stuff, but what we'll do before we talk spoilers, we will just say if you haven't done quest in X zone, you may want to skip ahead or something. So that way people know. Yeah. So if you've not done the quest in Deshaan for whatever reason, this is going to deal very heavily with the main story of the Deshaan zone, so skip ahead. There, spoiler.
You have been warned. Right, I can ruin everything now.
Yeah.
So a lot of the blame is being put on this group called the Maulborn, and a lot of the storyline revolves around there. So you're investigating this quest already. The quest doesn't start with Naryu, but as part of your search, you're searching for this guy called Ralden. He's a counselor. He's in charge of some stuff in Narsis. And as part of this search, you end up in a basement, and you see this woman in dark black and red leathers interrogating this courier called Evis Maris. And I know that because I played through all these quests in advance to write all this stuff. So you... hostile to begin with. She advises you pretty much to get away and not get embroiled in what she's up to, but she does admit that you're on the same side, but for different reasons. She gives you this letter to go to Ralden to give some more details about the plague. So at this point, you're already starting to work together, but what you already know about Naryu at this point is that she's a badass. Mm-hmm. She'll beat people up and kind of enjoy it. She talks about like getting to her favorite part of an interrogation, but explanation is not given as to what that favorite part involves. So you've got this sense that someone who, very determined, but has, kind of got a flexible side to her as well. So, you bump into her again, I think, a little later in either that quest or a slightly later quest when you both work out you're both trying to get rid of this group called the Moorborn, who are blamed for the Lodos Plague. And you join her in a fight. I think it's against the Moorborn, but I forgot because I couldn't remember if it was just bandits but at some point you're sort of sniping out a whole bunch of enemies and she's there. And at the end of it, she reveals quite a lot more because she now thinks that she can trust you. And she tells you that she's with her quote-unquote partner, Varon Daval, who's another Dwemer. By the way, Naryu is a Dwemer. She's a dark elf.
So hot.
Yeah, which means she has a British accent. And she's, this guy, Varon, who is also part of the Morag Tong. So there's these two tongs, we'll call them. She reminds us, of course, that being associated with Morag Tong or just being known to maybe associate with the Morag Tong is basically as good as being given a death sentence. So really kind of laying out very early on that, she's a shady girl. Now, the interesting thing is you then... Hang on, I've lost my train of thought. Where exactly was I? I remember putting this side note in because I did some extra research and saw on the Elder Scrolls wiki that Varon is a senior member, and apparently these are the only two remaining members of their cell within the Morag Tong.
Because they operate in cells of a couple people.
Right.
Yeah.
But so I wasn't sure whether at this time there was actually loads more of the Tong around and this is just the two of them, or if actually they were part of some huge group and there's only two of them left. So I wasn't really sure because it's still at this point like they're still pretty persecuted, I think.
Well, a lot of
outside of
I have to look at your notes. I don't know if you have it in here, but the one reason why they are so let me give me 2 seconds here. I just want to make sure I'm not jumping ahead and stealing your stuff. Okay. One of the reasons why they're so persecuted is because they were responsible for the death of the potentate. They're actually the ones who were responsible for the death of the potentate, Varissa Duché, who was
they assassinated.
Yes, that was the highest level contract I think they've ever had. But what made it so bad was the fact that they wrote Morag Tong on the wall in Varissa Duché's blood.
Yeah.
And that, and everyone's sitting there going, it's one of those things where it's like the rumors of, it was probably them. But the fact that, they had the hubris to write their own organization on the wall, like taking credit for this, what was supposed to be a secret, has now put them on the out and outs with the Empire as a whole, because it's like, dude, you just slew our standing emperor, right? That's what came to the outlawing of the Morag Tong in the Empire as a whole. Only reason why they're not outlawed in Morrowind is Morrowind was the only province that and even later on in the Empire, that was solid enough that Tiber Septim didn't conquer it, but allow them to pretty much remain autonomous under their own rulers and join the Empire only at their own will. It was at their terms. Everyone else was forcibly conquered and absorbed into the Empire. Vardenfell and Morrowind are part of the Empire in name only. They pay homage to the almost like lip service, but in no way can the Empire enforce its will upon Morrowind. So they're completely autonomous. That's why the outlaw of the Morag Tong does not extend to Morrowind and Vardenfell. Because, the Emperor can decree all he wants, but, we're essentially sovereign. So...
Yeah. And I mean, jumping ahead massively, the reason that a lot of this stuff doesn't come up is... if you take Skyrim's in the fourth era. Basically, the Morag Tong are gone in this point. I think there are rumblings, and I think it came up in the Dragonborn DLC actually that maybe it's been reformed, or some people are trying to reform it. But basically, it was on the down from there, and a lot of people went into hiding, into the shadows, as they would say. But the Dark Brotherhood, really took over in terms of sort of assassination groups and stuff. So that's a little bit of history, and the Varon, the other guy from the Tong. We'll come back to him in a bit because I thought it was worth mentioning him. So we'll return there. But in a later quest, just continuing with a few things that we know about Naryu so far. In a later quest, you're actually sort of doing the bidding of the tribunal's finest, Mother Morrowind, Almalexia herself. Good friend of Vivek, who you'll come to know well. Basically, she, as in Naryu, not Almalexia, she is keen to protect Mournhold from the Moorborn. Essentially because what happened to Narcissus was pretty nasty, and they don't want that to happen to Mournhold, hence Almalexia's concern as well. So she's very keen even at this point. I remember she's very anxious not to mention that she's from the Morag Tong, particularly to Almalexia. Now, Almalexia, I think, also points out that she knows all this, but doesn't seem to care, which I think also makes Almalexia a bit of a badass. So you're doing a bit more trailing and working with her. You go to the pub in Mournhold, the Flaming Nix.
Yep.
You poison some guy, get some keys. You remember the worst following quest in the game, in my opinion. It's very easy to get caught. To a nearby farm, and then you head into this basement system of tunnels as part of this quest. And I'm trying not to spoil too much of the storyline here by being discreet in case anyone's keen to go back and replay these on an alt or something.
I do have to mention one thing though. That whole the Flaming Nix was probably the hottest scene with Naryu ever. Because remember when she's like flirting with the courier?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she's sort of flirting to you because you can't see the courier behind you, and she's sort of like, "Oh, he's going there. Yes, get close to me. Yep, you're laughing now, aren't you? Yes. Get a bit closer. Okay, he's walking near the door. Something like that, and it's very seductive. And it's interesting because as a side note, you if you've got the persuasion skill, some of the closing lines of conversation with Naryu, you can either say goodbye as the standard, but sometimes you can use persuasion and say things like, I hope I see you soon, or
to which we know what you wrote every time, right?
Yeah, which obviously you do, except to my I was playing and I didn't have that, so I just had to say bye. Don't care about you, Naryu. Anyway, so you're in these tunnels, and there are two interesting revelations that came out here about or to do with Naryu. The first is that she describes Varon, that other Dunmer guy from the Morag Tong, as her partner. And obviously that could just be a partner, but there's a lot of concern. If you Google Naryu Virian, one of the top results is something like, is Naryu Virian single, ... asking for a friend. It's a really funny Reddit thread. But it's the only time in the whole time where there's even a hint that she's in any way involved with somebody, because she describes this guy as a partner, describes that he'd wring her neck or something if she knew she'd been in a dangerous place, and then she says she wishes he was here. And it made me think, interesting. Is there a little backstory there to Varon? Just in case anyone's curious. Now you don't find out, but I thought that was quite interesting.
I'm a little jealous, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's the only hint, and you're not able to kill him, so.
Oh. Now I'm really jealous, so.
The second
did you actively try to kill him? That's what I'm wondering. After you read that, you're
I just think it would annoy her too much, and she ain't the girl you want to be pissing off, let's be honest.
I feel like he's not right for you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, there were some patch notes years ago, very early patch notes once, where one of the lines in the patch notes was something like, Naryu now correctly stares into some guy's face while she stabs him in the head. It was something as visceral as that, I think, in a really early patch years ago. But anyway, she's a badass. That's the point here. But when you're in these tunnels, she describes that the tunnels under Mournhold used to be a hideout for the Morag Tong, long abandoned, but she remembers them. So, you don't know how old she is, but she's not that old. So within her lifetime, the Morag Tong had some base underneath Mournhold, which made me wonder, were there more? Are there lots of these old abandoned tunnels that were used by Morag Tong everywhere, and we've only ever seen this one in the second era in this game,
right?
Outside of Morrowind, obviously, because in Morrowind the game, you go to the abandoned base thing, don't you? And So that that particular scene, you learn a little bit more about Naryu, a little bit more about the background and the story about the Morag Tong. Particularly, if you hadn't played Morrowind, you were learning a lot about who this group was at this point, but very mysteriously.
Right.
Intriguing stuff. And then, later on in the game, and this is when you're in Eastmarch, so you're done with Deshaun. Do you move into Eastmarch next?
Deshaun, you go into Shadowfen next.
Okay, so you deal with the Argonians,
everything
and then
ordered.
You go and do all this stuff with the wonderful Saxlil. Eventually you get to Eastmarch, and then there's a quest in Fort Amal, which is in the southwestish area of Eastmarch. And you, as part of a quest, you bump into Naryu dressed as a servant girl. And there's a brief little bit of role play and then she recognizes you. She's like, "Oh, do you want more bread?" And blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, "Oh, it's you from Deshaun." And it's quite fun. And
can I mention one more thing here? Oh, that was awesome. It's a little later on, but when you do the main storyline, like when you finish, before you either go to Cold Harbor or right at the end, you meet Razem-Dar. So it's like at the end of the main quest, right? The vestige quest. But if you talk to Razem-Dar, he actually makes mention of, "Hey, your friend Naryu over there, tell her she can dress up as a maid and come to Razem-Dar's house anytime she wants."
Yes. Yes. And you do see a lot of flirting with Naryu. In fact, in this very quest, there's a little bit where there's some guy sleeping off some booze or something, and he's talking in his sleep. He's like, "Oh yes, Naryu, whatever you say, Naryu, I love you, Naryu." And then there's another guy who propositions her in a bar about going upstairs for a snuggle.
And
or
she's
something.
super flirty, and then she like saunters up like, "Yeah, come here, big boy." And then you come up behind her and beat him in the head. And she's like, "Well, about time."
Yeah, and she talks about not wanting to keep this dress on and how women wear these things. She's not very girly in that sense, but it's still seen as something of a bit of an idol. With certainly with the various men folk in and across Tamriel. So, but you're in Fort Amal, and you join up again to help out. And it turns out that this is the first solo quest that she's been given from Varen. So you learned earlier that Varen is a senior member of the Tong, but they're the last two in their cell. Now, for some reason, he's gone off somewhere, and he's sent Naryu to do this solo quest on her own, which makes me think that either she's quite new to the Tong, or something else that's a little harder to define, because she never doing a solo quest before or a solo assignment before is quite weird. But the second time, she'd obviously been around long enough to recognize that some tunnels in Mournhold are long abandoned, but that she'd personally been to. So it was a really weird kind of dichotomy, like, how did you get this long without doing a solo quest? Why this particular quest or assignment to be doing solo? And where's Varen at this point? Because I don't think you see him again. If you do, I certainly can't remember. Yeah, right? They broke up because she met some Nord who was hanging around her in the Flaming Nyx. That would be me, ladies and gentlemen.
Or me.
Anyway.
I'm saying.
But she mentions that she's tracking down some illusionist, I think a Breton guy, who's causing the same problem that we're trying to solve in Fort Amal at the time. And you solve it, and people get stabbed in the back, and it's wonderful. And then she's gone.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the last you see of her. There are a few references to her throughout the game, and Ag just mentioned the one with Razem-Dar. Like, people know who she is, and they know that you know her. And we do know from, in fact, I think maybe we learned this from my interview with the development team, that if you're playing on an existing character, she'll recognize you, and she knows that it's her long lost friend, from way back when, joining up again to help her. So that'll be a really interesting scene to play out, which we can't do on our on the ND8 PTS, because you don't have your current characters unless you go through and play all the quests, which
Right.
would be a bit of a waste of time. So that'll be a really interesting thing to try out to begin with. Is how she responds to you with an existing character if you've done these quests.
Which
but
I'm really excited about, because now I get to see Naryu and visit her again, reacquaint ourselves after a long absence in the way that people generally do. I love
the last in the base game that you see of her. I played through all of these quests, and then after doing all these, I looked them up, and I can't find any more until you get to the Dark Brotherhood DLC. And we did talk about this on the show a few weeks ago because I ran into her totally by accident. I thought I'd done all the quests around the Gold Coast, and I don't know what I was doing. I was just walking around somewhere, and I saw the little new quest icon light up. I was like, "Hello, undone quest," and it was Naryu, and it was the most excited I've. It was palpable, physical, very guttural excitement. Let me tell you, to see her crouching behind a bush. So you do that quest, and I won't say too much about this because a lot of people I think will maybe not have done this, but you're seeking out a noble. There's somebody that needs to die, and she doesn't want the Dark Brotherhood to know that she's taking care of things, so she asks for your help. And this quest, I think, in the Dark Brotherhood DLC, is one of the best, if not the best quest that involves Naryu, because not only does it involve Naryu, it involves Razumdar as well. So
there you go. That's like the perfect.
There's a particular scene where you're literally in a room having a giant conversation between yourself, Razumdar, and Naryu, and it's wonderful. And they're disagreeing about something. You have to side with one or the other, and
I'm going to be torn at that point because it's Naryu, but then it's also Razumdar.
Right? Yeah. So it's difficult, and you can sort of betray Razumdar in a previous quest. And I reckon if you left him for dead in that particular quest, and let's not pretend whether or not he's dead or not. Like, there are many choices you can make in that early quest. But I'd say if, depending on how you concluded that quest, maybe you want to side with Raz in this argument. But that would be our own moral decision, everybody.
Yeah. I know exactly which quest you're referring to, and him and I may not be on the best terms right now, so there is that. But
so I sided with good old Naryu in this quest, and I recommend everybody do. And that's kind of it.
No, I recommend everyone do Razumdar because I want her to only love me.
Yes. Well, yes. And that's basically you have with Naryu throughout the entire game, and everything you learn about her pretty much up until you get to the DLC. Now, we can't talk about anything in that, as we've mentioned.
And nor would we want to, because, of course, it's not even out yet. No one else has those opportunities, and we want you to experience it as well, right? Because the stories are amazing, So
that's everything about Naryu, and then just a few little bits, just worth mentioning, I think, about the Morag Tong, because they are a really interesting guild. Personally, I find them more interesting than the Dark Brotherhood.
College Kid 15 in chat says there's a second Naryu quest in the Gold Coast.
There is, and one of them is called the Sweet Rolled Killer, and one of them is called something for a prince, or it might be a different one. But I believe they're sort of back to back. Like, I think you might complete one and start another. But if there's another, and if I'm confused, then I would deeply like to know.
Yeah.
There are certainly two separate elements to it, but I think they're both happening at the same time.
Okay, so it's like, so you're thinking it's whenever it happens, you finish one, the quest, you accept the reward, but then you accept one from her like right away again.
There's a possibility, yeah, but at the same time, it could easily have been that maybe I did the first Naryu one the first time and forgot, and then did this one, and that was the second. So maybe all I remember is that I just did, and then she talks about sodding off back to Morrowind,
which is where we're going to see her next.
Indeed. And I don't think you see her after that. And the last one is definitely the Sweet Roll Killer, because that's when she leaves.
Right.
So, yeah, there may be one before that I'd forgotten. But it's certainly all tied in with the same stuff and the same theme.
Well, here's something else that I kind of have a problem with. We went over everything with Naryu, but I seem to feel like there was so much more interaction with some of the other, recurring characters. I don't feel like Naryu got near enough screen time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because when we were talking about it, she does show up a few times in the Lotus one. That's where you first meet her. But in reality, it's not like she's front and center for the Lotus. She just kind of is a guide that kind of points you along the way, right?
Yeah.
Like
she unlike like some of the Stibbons quests, to give it a comparison, a lot of them start and end with Stibbons and Lady Clarice specifically. Whereas Naryu, almost all of them, you're already doing it, you run into her, and when you complete it without her, she's just there doing stuff, which I actually find quite endearing as far as storylines go, because she's never placed front and center. She's always sort of in the background, which is almost analogous to the Morag Tong itself. So it's a fascinating way of, lots of screen time coming up for good old Naryu.
And well deserved, because like you said, I don't know, like I agree, like that whole, what you just said made a lot of sense. I didn't even think about it like that kind of limited in the background really does fit with her mysterious allure, which is probably why we're all so attracted to her in the first place, other than her super flirty, get close to me stuff, which I'm not going to lie, while playing that, I may have blushed a little, just saying, like there was a little bit of honey glow in the cheeks, if you will, during that entire thing. But it does fit her aesthetic. But being the Naryu, lover that I am, it makes me a little sad that it just feels like some of these other characters, like the Darian Gutierrez, and like the thing is with those recurring characters is, if you look, they're maybe not front and center, but if you look, those characters appear in every zone. They're somewhere in every zone that you can talk to. Naryu, not so much, and I don't know, I just feel like she deserves more screen time.
Yeah. Would you like some in no certain order facts that I've pulled out about the Morag Tong and Naryu?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Tong is literally translated to Forester's Guild in the Old Dwemer language.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. I didn't
know that until today, or if I knew it, I'd forgotten. But apparently that's a thing.
I did not know that, so I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. And you sort of run into Morag Tong in some way in some of the games. I mean, Morrowind is an exception because you can join the Morag Tong and do a whole lot of stuff there. But I don't think there's any interaction with the Morag Tong in any form in Oblivion, as far as I'm aware. I can't remember of a single example. I couldn't find an example. I think they're basically not there. There may be books that reference them, but I don't think there's any interaction with anyone. But if anyone knows that that's wrong, do email or tweet us, because I'd love to know if there's any Morag Tong action in Oblivion, but I don't think there is.
Yeah, I don't think there would be either.
Yeah, there is a brief encounter with someone in if you get the Dragonborn DLC, which was the very last DLC they released for Skyrim, and there's an element of Morag Tong in there. And obviously now about what happens in Elder Scrolls Online, but largely they were confined to Morrowind for good reason, hence why you run into them in the next game, we assume. But and then the other thing, and this is an interesting one. I saw as a what's it called? Like a caption to a screenshot from the very first trailer of the game, where Naryu is seen assassinating the Grandmaster of the Morag Tong in the upcoming Morrowind chapter. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to leave that hanging there. Apparently,
we just stopped. back in there. There we go. Can you hear me, Nate?
Hello?
Yeah, sorry. Stupid thing just kind of cut out on me. So you were saying that she's assassinating someone from the Grandmaster of the Morag Tong, and that's where you cut out.
Oh. Okay, well, we can cut that out. There's a guy in the trailer who, the big fat Dwemer.
Yep.
And you see her sort of jumping over him, and the caption says something like, Naryu Virian assassinating the Grandmaster of the Morag Tong. In this screenshot on the main wiki.
And I see that you finally got to see in the Discord chat the dragon memes and the 36 Shades of Vivek. I see that. I just saw it on Discord.
Yes, I've looked at that. I've seen that there.
Yeah, that was the current theme. So whenever I talk lore, the memes come out. So there you go.
I look forward to seeing more of those.
Yeah, the Vivek one that I had last patch was very popular, apparently.
That's it. And if you want a couple of books to read, if you want to know more about the Morag Tong in general, there's some great info in this. There's a book called The Brothers of Darkness. There's been in pretty much all the games, I think, since Daggerfall, the Daggerfall, which is interesting. So give that a read. There's lots of information. That's probably the best one. And then there's another one called Fire and Darkness that's got some interesting details in as well. And that's first seen in Oblivion. So you can see that in Oblivion. I think it's in Skyrim, but it's certainly on the web. So look those up if you want more. And that's, I think, about as comprehensive look at Naryu Virian and an introduction to the Morag Tong as we can do in 60 minutes. So
yeah,
there you go.
There you go, guys. So that's pretty much the end of Tales of Tamriel for this week. We hope you enjoyed. Nate, thank you so much for coming on. As always, it's always a blast having you on, obviously, because, we get to talk lore. I think like 60% of this entire episode, if not more, was lore. So...
yeah, I think probably something like that.
Yeah, maybe even a little higher. And I'm strangely okay with this. Actually, in fact, I encourage it. That seems to have been the right option, right? I can't imagine anything else. So before we go, where can people find you?
Best thing, I'm at Nate ESO, NATEESO, on the Twitter thing, the Twitter machine, and in game, search on the European Megaserver for Miss Misa or at Lanxon 101, LANXON 101. Add me. It's going to do some stuff. Let's hang out in Morrowind when it's out on the public servers, and let's go questing.
Absolutely, and I look forward to the response from our amazing European community, who is going to take you through and teach you how to do trials, so that next week you'll be able to, teach us or tell us some tales about your first trial experience. I'm putting a lot of faith in our community here to reach out and to assist you. So
I would love to do that one evening. Yep.
Yeah. So all right. You can find me Aggelos at Aggelos_WOF on Twitter, in game on the North American Megaserver at Aggelos AGGELOS. I want to thank everyone for listening. You can check out everything we do, DungeonCrawlerNetwork.com, YouTube.com/DungeonCrawlerNetwork. Our main website has links to all of our social media feeds, as well as thank you so much for all of our Patreon supporters over at Patreon.com/DungeonCrawlerNetwork. You guys allow us to do a whole bunch of stuff. Keep these things going, as well as allow me to move host when our other host decides to try to screw me over. So that is very much appreciated. Thank you so much. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Tales of Tamriel, and we will see you next week. See you later, everybody.
A serpent lights the ancient sky, a thread of tainted stars. Evil stirs, and in its wake the souls of mortals sway, and sorrow reigns songs of war will rend and roar till the sun burns bright once more. These are days